knows nothing of these. So these are the states that we go through, and these are the dream states that we go through. This is important here, the symbols, because let me read it to you directly from here. It is individualized to each one of us. It says here, let it be understood that the I consciousness touches the dream, the dreamless asleep, and the unison states in terms of his own contents. So the content of mine is not the same as everybody else's. So that is why one person cannot interpret the dreams of the others. It is individualized to each human being, depending where you are in your life and what you're experiencing. The symbology of the brain that weaves that information that has been dropped down from the ego to the brain to the I consciousness, because we remember it. But do we know how to interpret it? This student does not know how to interpret these symbols. When they appear, have no idea what it means. So you have to analyze it, and see if you can decipher what it means, because it's individualized to you. No one else is going to come and be able to express what that really means for you. It says, on what does the nature in particular of these dreams depend? Can we regulate this process of our dream activities? And the theosophical literature says, yes, we can. It says, train the body and the brain in ways of quietude, not to be nervous and neurotic, of being collected and calm, so that when the I consciousness is gone, the pace, the control can be exerted by the ego consciousness. That's our higher aspect. So the controller then sets the pace and quality and quantity of the automatic activity of the brain in its alertness and in its sleep. So the I consciousness, once free from the body, can be controlled by that higher ego, and in waking consciousness, the higher ego has a better hold on the I consciousness if we allow it to come in and exert its influence. Then it asks this question: in majority of men, what controls this I consciousness? What guides it at the present moment? And then it says our senses. So our senses control our I consciousness. Senses. Where does this come from? Outside. Things from the outside drag us down into a particular line of thought, feeling, and action. And the higher consciousness is left helpless, more or less. This is a condition of the majority of people. But then it says, imagine that through training, the higher consciousness is able to control the I consciousness. Suppose that the ego can control this personality and make it move as it wants to. What would be the result? Why? We would be like gods of old, immortals, it says, pacing paths of mortality in the service of man. So there is no other path but this path. Under any circumstance, this is the way to understand the sheaths of the human soul, what they do, what its purpose is, and how we can bring about change. This I consciousness, this lower I consciousness, suppose then learns to think as the higher consciousness is thinking, feels as the higher consciousness is feeling, and is willing to act as the higher consciousness would act. What kind of life then would there be? Would the senses be able to control? No. All life will be self-engendered. All actions then will be ego-born. This is higher, right? Will be ego-born. There are actions, certain actions and no others, certain feelings and no others, certain thoughts and no others. And the ego is what? This ego is the spiritual. What about the I consciousness? What's that personality involved in? Self. Survival. Materiality. Selfishness. What's this one concerned about? I'm going to directly read from here. It says, all the emotions that it can express are those that are rooted in the great emotion of compassion. Its activities are all energizing its personalities. Its knowledge is power. Its love is wisdom. Its actions are sacrifice. If all our actions were of the nature of sacrifice, all our love was of the nature of wisdom, all our knowledge was the nature of strength, the spiritual strength, we would be then living the life of the ego. So let's put it up here. Its knowledge is power. Its love is wisdom. And its actions are sacrifice. And then this enables us to live the life of the ego, which we have come to do, not the personality. So, from this point of view then, the higher consciousness then controls our activity. But in real life, as we are now, when we're in sleep, we call those dreams. Those are the activities of the ego in deep sleep and beyond. And in waking consciousness then, it cannot impress the lower personality, because the lower personality is involved in those things, is not interested in the ego life most of the time. It's involved within its own activities. It energizes its activities by its sense emotions, not otherwise. So, from that perspective, as we are today, our lives are shadowy. Some lives, it says, are nightmares, others are incoherent, some are pleasant, and some are fanciful. But the life of the spiritual consciousness is purposeful. This is purposeful here. it does not do anything without having some control as to what is going to take place. It is purposeful. All of its activity is purposeful. It makes the brain, the senses, feelings and thoughts, energies and instruments of the higher consciousness. And similarly, there would be no death, for the death is but a condition of the sleep that has become permanent. So what happens, what is then death, a state that we mentioned earlier? So we said that this I consciousness learns from its ego consciousness when it is in sleep. It is able to hear what it is being imparted to it, but it is not in words, correct? And this ego consciousness is not able to make itself felt or heard during the day because the personality is involved in these, not in this. The purpose of our higher spiritual activity would be all concerned only in this, and the ego is purposeful and uses the lower activities for its own use. And at death then, this I consciousness and the ego consciousness are split. The split is permanent because we go to sleep, which is called death, for average 12 to 1500 years as developed. Now, maybe it is less in Kali Yuga, I'm not sure, but that's what the literature say. So instead of going to sleep at night and waking up in the morning, when that is disconnected, when these two are disconnected, that is what death is. We don't wake up because the ego consciousness is not there to energize the I consciousness. So this in reality is what? A reflection of the true ego. It's a reflection of the true ego. So it says if we learn to energize, train the personal consciousness so that it becomes self-luminous, enlightened, and does not shine with borrowed light by its inherent light of its parent soul, the ego, this is then, it has learned to put forth the inner light that comes from this aspect, the ego light. So then there would be no death, would there be? Because if we are conscious on every level and we go to sleep knowingly that we're going to come back to continue with the life, the break in between is a short one, and we come back to continue with this work that the ego then shows us. It guides the light, the path that we're going to walk, and we don't complain, we do it. So then the real spiritual development then starts when we only acknowledge that we are immortal. And in the secret doctrine it is stated that the lie in the heart has to be removed, that we are here for one life is the lie, because there is no death and there is continuity of consciousness whether we know it or not, and we shall come back. So karma and reincarnation then become extremely important to know and to understand and to apply to our daily lives, because this is who we are and we will come back, because this is the real life of the ego is specifically written here, not the other, which is the one that lives with the borrowed light. So then what is the change that comes about? This is also very important. The change that comes about is very important. It is stated that the